6, analogies and metaphors. This one is so big. This one is so fat. This is the juiciest. And nobody's been doing it. Hello? Analogies and metaphors are like the lifeblood of NLP. I'd love to see everybody just piling in with tons of juicy, offensive, profane, illuminating, higher dimensional thought directing. I'd like to see metaphors just, like freaking stars bursting in air, just sending our thoughts off into the most bizarre cartwheels and unexpected creative mind jams. Yeah, everybody, back off the truth claims, because they're so fucking literal, and this concrete thinking literalism is like the death of the mind. Blow past literalism, let it hang out, be a metaphorical exhibitionist, really, let's see all the little squirming worms in your brain, man. That's where the fun is. The metaphors are fun. I like really good, squishy, slimy, juicy metaphors. They're just, I'm not even going to make a metaphor. The metaphor is so obscene I can't even say it right now. Probably get thrown off YouTube for it. So yeah, bang out the metaphors. If everybody on this would just come out with killer metaphors and killer analogies and phenomenal equivalences and similes, it would be a lot more fun. It would be a lot more illuminating. It would be a lot more life, and it would be a shitload more productive. Change frame size. That's 7. Change frame size. Now that refers to what Dilts and Aristotle will refer to as the constraining causes. Okay, the frame. What's causing the frame? Who's building this frame? How did it get made? Who's the frame master? And so that speaks to presuppositions, boundary conditions, relationships, things that serve to say, the discussion is this, it's this, and it's not that, and it's not that, and it's not that, and it's not that, and it's this, why is it this? What are the constraining causes that cause the discussion to be in this box, and what happens if you change those? Or, maybe we're saying, we're operating from multiple sets of boundary conditions, Peter's boundary condition, what he believes the appropriate boundary conditions are here, and Malcolm's boundary conditions here, and my boundary conditions are there, and Adrian's boundary conditions over here. And so, we've got these people, it's like this Venn diagram, and maybe there's some little intersection of what, we all kind of agree are the boundary conditions. Or, how this is going to, play out in Timbuktu. So that's enough for 7. 8, another outcome. Okay, another outcome, I think, my own notes to myself are, they ask directional, to ask the other outcome challenge, to ask another directional what-if questions, such as, well, what is the real issue here? Or where else might we lead? Or what else might we be talking about? So another outcome question is kind of like a deflector. It's like a path deflection. So you're going to, okay, we're kind of on this timeline, and we see this kind of consequential, kind of what the Aristotle called the final cause. You're kind of being drawn magnetically down, to this space station somewhere, and then along comes this other anti-grav beam, and all of a sudden you're kind of boing, and you're going in another direction. Well, how can you suggest other outcomes or other final causes? Say, well, yeah, we've been kind of headed this way, and we've been kind of emotionally charged to go to this way, and bang, we're going to go off that way. Tom Cruise. Then, of course, 9, model of the world. I think model of the world is kind of interesting because I think it relates to a position called realism. What is the real? What are the limits of the real? What are the credible bounds of the real? So you say, well, what is your model of the world? What can be achieved? What was possible in life? How are things? It's this kind of background sense of what the truth of stuff is. It's an interesting, subtle kind of embedding medium. Your model of the world. I think a lot could be said on the model of the world. So Peter's model of the world may be just so radically different than my model of the world, because these are kind of like cultures and just these fundamental things that are just so backgrounded in our minds that there's just no way to see them until you kind of out of that into some other cultural setup, and it's just like, holy smokes, I'm grounded in this stuff? No shit, I never knew that. Which leads to 10, reality strategy. And remember the reality strategy challenge I had? Well, how would you know if this isn't true? But I think it's more important to say, well, how do you know that things are true? Your reality strategy for truth. How do you know they're false? But a third case I think is very important to consider is how do you know if they're ambiguous or unclear? What are your criteria for ambiguity? Like, hey man, that doesn't make any sense. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sounded good at first, but when I thought it through 2 or 3 times, it just, it didn't gel. I can't get a clear fix on what you're saying. So, what are your criteria? What are your basic criteria for truthfulness, falsehood, ambiguity? And if you can think of other categories, that's really cool. Like think, weird shit that glows in the dark. What are your criteria for weird shit that glows in the dark? Especially if you produced it. Where does that leave us? 11, counterexample. Now, interesting, a counterexample is an analogy. Now, it's very surprising when you tell it to people. A counterexample is an analogy, but it's an anti-analogy. So, you could say, well, he's not aging like wine, he's aging like cheese, okay? I feel that way about myself frequently. So think about that. It's a very interesting thing. It's like an anti-metaphor or an anti-analogy, a form of analogy or metaphor that disconfirms something. 12, super important. 12, hierarchy of criteria. Nobody's been asking that question. Nobody. All you people, you have not been asking hierarchy of criteria. You are bad. Because only good people ask about hierarchy of criteria, so it's very high on my hierarchy of criteria to ask about the hierarchy of criteria. Okay? How about that? That's an apply to self. Okay? That's 13. So what we did, we just went from 12, hierarchy of criteria, to 13. But then you could think of apply to self in a totally different way. I thought this really, because Dilts has kind of got his take, but that doesn't mean that's the take. That's just one possible way of doing this. So apply to self would be I said, well, what would happen if you and your son physically changed bodies for a week and he acted out all the behaviors you taught him? Okay? So that's another way of doing apply to self. Lots of ways we can do apply to self. That's great stuff. Go do that. Like, insult the shit out of me, man. Make me, really get me defensive and pissed off so I can just come back with all my stuff, man. Boom. Okay. And, of course, metaframe, which is meta-beliefs. Something that has a lot to do with meta-beliefs. 14. What do you believe about beliefs? How do you believe that beliefs, and working with your beliefs and changing your beliefs? You think about what's going on in our little shebang here. We got a lot of stuff going on at the meta-belief level. It's very deep. It's kind of like your model of the world, in a way. It's kind of like your model of the world at the beliefy level. How do, if I just take on his beliefs, man, I might explode and purple shit's going to come out of me. So, okay, that's real quick. That's, probably all anybody can stand without running screaming. So, let's go there. Let's pick up that book. Let's bang through that stuff. Let's use all those tools. Man, we've been taught those tools. We paid a lot of money. We've been grinding on this forever. Time to really pull them out and go to battle, man. Get your battle axe out. Get out that hierarchy of criteria. Chainsaw Freddy Krueger, baby. Yeah.